My name is Calvin Bowers. I live in Los Angeles, California, and I serve as a minister at the Figueroa Church of Christ. Formerly, it's been my privilege to teach at Pepperdine University and work in administrative categories or levels there. I'm pleased to have with me tonight my wife, Barbara Bowers, who is a very faithful companion and has been my assistant in a number of things. And we want to share some ideas about the conception, the development, and the distribution of this book. It's called Realizing the California Dream. I know when I came to California in 1955, I had a dream. And really, my dream has been more than realized. But when I started writing this book, I realized that most people came to California for a similar purpose. Some came to improve their socioeconomic status. And of course, others came to expand their religious concerns. So I came about this topic. I remember how I first thought of this topic, Realizing the California Dream, in Cleveland, Ohio. And I woke up about 4 o'clock in the morning, and somehow or another you knew that was what you wanted to do. So I want to tell how the book came to be, and I want to share some of the pictures and some of the future hopes of additional writing. This book, Realizing the California Dream, I really just started writing, and it took form as I went along. The form that it took, the subtitle is The Story of Black Churches of Christ in Los Angeles. The first Black Church of Christ minister preached here in 1902 by the name of Samuel R. Cassius. We will show his picture later. I was glad to have this foreword written by attorney Fred Gray, who happened to be the attorney for Rosa Parks and the first attorney in Montgomery for Martin Luther King. He's still a very famous attorney in Tuskegee, legal counsel for Tuskegee, with his law firm, which consists of 2 of his sons and about 5 or 6 other people. Now, looking at the table of contents, we start off with acknowledgement, and we start with Route 66, early flashbacks. In 1955, one day after Labor Day, in September, on a Tuesday, I started for California. I'd never been further west than Memphis, and really I hadn't been to Memphis many times. I received little encouragement because from my family because they're so far away, 2,000 miles away. And secondly, because I was going by myself. Looking at the table of contents, we start Route 66. I pulled onto Route 66 on a Tuesday morning, and probably about 10 o'clock. And I followed Route 66 all the way to LA. I had one funny incident that when I was going through New Mexico, I passed a car with a group of Latinos or Native Americans, and they had their shirts off, and I'd only seen Indians in cowboy movie pictures, and as I passed them, I saw they were trying to catch up to me. It was about 5 or 6 of them, and I was just by myself. I speeded up, and they speeded up. I got faster, and they got faster. So finally, I couldn't get much faster, and they pulled alongside of me. One leaned out of the window as far as he could and yelled in a very loud voice, "You're about to lose your license plate." My heart gradually got back to a normal beat, and that added to the excitement of my trip. We started off with Route 66 and behold the dreamer, S.R. Cassius. whom I will show just a little bit later, was the first black band who preached in L.A. in 1902. I learned more about him later. I learned that he had traveled through Texas, he had traveled in Oklahoma, and he really had been in areas of the East and traveled many places. But he came to Los Angeles, and I found a magazine that he wrote in, the Christian Standard. I think that was the name of the magazine. And he wrote articles reporting about his trip to California. But he was the first man to preach there. So we start with that, with the motif of the dreamer. Behold, the dreamer cometh. Really taken from Joseph when he went to visit his brothers. They sarcastically said, behold, the dreamer cometh. And then we describe what it must have been like in 1902. Some of the popular songs at that time and some of the movies, some of the activities that were going on in our nation in 1902. And then by 1922, we have the first black Church of Christ in Los Angeles. It was on Compton Avenue. So we call that the Dream on Compton Avenue. Then we have a second Church of Christ and a little bit later on Wilmington Avenue. And incidentally, those two churches are still in existence. Then we have the third, the New Dream on 48th and Compton. This church started out on 48th and Compton. Later, they moved to McKinley Avenue, 43rd and McKinley, and ended up being the Figueroa Church of Christ, where I have worked for 53 years. The key figure in that congregation was R.N. Hogan. Looking at the cover of this book, we have four important figures. J.S. Winston, who was really kind of a pioneer and one of the founders of the Southwestern Christian College. R.N. Hogan, who was in many ways my mentor. I worked with him 40 years. We had really a real father and son relationship. But I think we stayed together so long because we were more like two adult men working together. But I respected him as a father because of his age. Here we have Amos Cassius, Amos Lincoln Cassius, who was the son of S.R. Cassius. And S.R. Cassius, I understand, had about 21 children. We have then the elderly gentleman, G.P. Bowser. G.P. Bowser reared R.N. Hogan from the age of 14 and really taught him how to be a minister. There is an interesting stream here. G.P. Bowser was a member of the Methodist Church, African Methodist Church, which is, you know, is more of an independent church, more tied to Africa. So G.P. Bowser had a relatively good education, and he was very independent, and it was not in the category of Uncle Tom. A.L. Cassius went to Tuskegee. He was to Tuskegee High School. And while there, he was one of the guards that stood and served on the porch of Booker T. Washington. His father went to the White House and shook the hand of Abraham Lincoln when he was a little boy. So I guess there's some significance there that he named his son Amos Lincoln Cassius. If you look far enough, you know that Amos, the minor prophet in the Bible, was a wanderer. He wandered over into Israel from Judah and was a prophet. Let's look a little bit more at this table of content and how we organized it. We have the two Titan dreamers, A.L. Cassius and R.N. Hogan. And then we have the gathering of dreamers. People like myself fall into this category. We were all men who could not go to schools associated with Church of Christ in other states. So we had no other option if we wanted to go into higher education, Christian higher education, than to come to Pepperdine. So we call this a gathering of dreamers, and you will see some of those. Ironically, these men became the ministers for these new churches. And ironically, they were able to work together because they had been moved from other states, motivated or pulled by the desire to go to Pepperdine. While at Pepperdine, they got to know each other. So when they started preaching, they had more of a collegiate relationship with each other. So we had that set. And then we have from dream to reality, how all of these congregations began. We have continuance of that. At the end, we have dreams in transition. And these were churches that were turning from white to black.
Okay.
White to black. We had 6 or 7 of those. We had the story of music. We had excellent singing groups who sang throughout the state and some in other states. We have a segment here called Sisters Dream 2. And we will show you these categories just a little bit later on. We have a chapter on each of these sisters, starting with Pearl Williams, who lives to be 113 years old. There's much to be said about her. Ending with my first wife, who was Moselle Bowers. Then we have race relations in the California Dream, working together in the California Dream. And a couple of our works were the Campaign for Christ, the LA Bible College, and we end with Looking Over Jordan. Now I'd like to share some of the pictures that help to tell this story. We start here with S.R. Cassius. It surprised me as I began to talk to his family members. They said that S.R. Cassius was known in their family as the son of Robert E. Lee. That surprised me. And they said, well, we always knew in our family that he was the son of Robert E. Lee. No research actually revealed that, but we did find one article that said that S.R. Cassius and his mother were slaves in the household of Robert E. Lee's cousin. They were purchased by Robert E. Lee because he did not want them to get out of the family. They lived around the Washington, Maryland era. And S.R. Cassius had an opportunity, to learn. I would say he may have had a high school education. His rhetoric rivaled the rhetoric of Frederick Douglass. Very excellent rhetoric. We also have here S.R. Cassius as a young man and S.R. Cassius as an old man with his wife. The first black Church of Christ started in 1922. A.L. Cassius was a minister of that church. He had been to Booker T. Washington School in Tuskegee, and you'll see some of his traits there. We have the first black couple. They look like an integrated couple. I think he was Indian and she was black American. We have their family. We even have the house where the first church started as a Bible class in their home. We see the first deed for the first black Church of Christ, one of the first leaders, and we have the first building. S.R. Cassius was a builder of this building, having learned the building trade at Tuskegee Institute. He also had a cafe, and here you have his cafe down on 10th and Central, along with his wife and along with his friend, Brother Keeble. These are just a series. This is just a series of pictures. Marshall Keeble, G.P. Bowser, R.N. Hogan, and other individuals. Then we have pictures of various groups in the Los Angeles area. We have Norval Young, Kenny Hahn, and then some of the fellow Gathering of Dreamers, Carol Pitts, Vance, Vanderbilt Lewis, and others. G.E. Stewart, who was blind and one of the greatest preachers. We have the first lectureship held among blacks in Oklahoma. I believe this date was 1947. Here are other pictures of activities and singing groups. We're kind of proud of this because this was my picture with George Pepperdine. I had a chance to meet him and to know him. I will say, I'd like to say we were good friends, but this picture was just incidental, but I've become very proud of it. And these were colleagues of mine, Joe Brasher and Carl Backus. And here is a picture of Alex Haley along with Supervisor Kenneth Hunt, who was a member of the Church of Christ and whose son became the mayor of California, a mayor of Los Angeles. Here we have those women that we talked about. Sister's Dream 2, starting out with Pearl Williams, who lived to be 112. Sister Maggie Hogan, the wife of Brother Hogan. Sister Ruby Holland Love, Bethel Smith, Bernice Pitts, Mineola Crosby, Jessie Fillmore, Sister Holt, Sister Annie C. Tuggle, Sweet Alice, Ruby Vance, and my first wife, who passed away in 1904. Not 2004, not 1904, 2004, Moselle Bowers. Other features of this book, as we look at it, we have a biographical index. And I found this to be one of the most interesting parts of the book because people can look and read about their relatives who lived in the area who passed away. For example, Daisy Adkins, Imogene Allen. We have about 70 people, and people like to buy this book so that they can even send it to their families. Then we have a final a bibliography of materials that we've used in this book. And some of the books were Michael Casey, From Saddleback to City Streets, Willie Cato by Brother Keeble, Lewis Cochran, The Fool of God, and the book that I really liked was Kyle Hazelden, A Mandate for White Christians, and also he wrote a book called The Christian Problem in the Racial Problem in Christian Perspectives. We did have, and this is very helpful, most books have this, we did have an index here where people can find their relatives quite easily. And then we have in the back here a little story of kind of biographical sketch of Moselle and me when we were married. After we were married with our 3 children before she passed away. The final cover of the book, we have recommendations by Dr. Andrew Benton, who is the president of Pepperdine, and we have Jerry Rushford, who is a professor of church history at Pepperdine, and we also have Jack Evans, who's the president of Southwestern. This will give you an idea of what we have written, and we hope to expand the use of this book. We are into the 2nd printing, and we have sold quite a number of these books. And they may be secured by contacting me. Now, I really don't know our timing that we have. We have about a minute. Okay, we want to wrap up with the idea that there is a great history of black people in this country. And it eliminates a lot of the stereotypes that they've had about black people. I found that most black people have a heavy Native American heritage. And most black people have just begun to appreciate the fact their heritage over the last few years. And I'm inspired to write other books, and I hope I'll be able to do it. But this has been a pleasure in trying to produce this book.